Okay. I was just looking at the stuff and I go, all right, let's do this one first and we'll press on from there. Look, I know that it's 1:15 and I know that by 2 o'clock I'm going to be stifling yawns because the canes I just ate is, blood sugar and nap time and everything else. I get it. I'll try to be sensitive to our time and we can all get out there and fight over the shirts. That'll wake us all up. If we're all wrestling around WWE style, that'll get us back to, being awake. But I will do my best. And I say this, look, I have presentations that go into a whole lot more detail in regards to the Qur'an, the history of Muhammad. That's just too much. If you want that element, if you go on YouTube, you can find James White, Islam A to Z. We'll have a lot more of that stuff in it. I did it at a large church in New Orleans a number of years ago, Islam A to Z. I do a lot more with it, because it is fascinating, and you can understand why I would especially find this fascinating. The history of the Qur'an. I will mention this to you. Most Christians know more about the history of the Bible than Muslims know about the history of the Qur'an. Most of the Muslims you will speak to will assume that the Qur'an, the Arabic Qur'an, they do not believe an English translation is the Qur'an. There is no translation of the Qur'an. The Qur'an only exists in Arabic. The Qur'an has eternally existed on a heavenly tablet in heaven in Arabic. Even before the Arabic language developed on earth, the Qur'an in Arabic, as it would be spoken in the late 6th century, early 7th century in Arabia, the Qur'an already existed in that language eternally. The Shia don't go here, but the Sunni developed the theology that the Qur'an is co-eternal with Allah. It's not created. It didn't come into existence. That causes, there's all sorts of theological problems with that when you think about it. And there's all sorts of problems with what that means about the fact that it's very clear that the author of the Qur'an was ignorant of many things. It also explains why, when I debated a Muslim on whether the Qur'an misrepresents Christianity in Surah 5, that his final position was, we don't know what Surah 5 actually means. But the Muslim, how many of you have read the Qur'an? Everybody does that. Every single group I've ever asked has had people say, I did, and then have, and that means parts. I've read parts of it. You said you read the whole thing.
I had Dr. Anderson's class at Seminary.
Oh, at RTS?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now, funny thing is, he took sabbatical about 10 years ago, and guess who filled in for him? And in that class, I had a Muslim friend of mine, Abdullah Kunde, and still my favorite Muslim debate to this day was my debate with Abdullah Kunde in Australia on can God become man? And what it made it so good is, first of all, Abdullah is just a nice man. He is a serious man. And what he did is he read my book, The Forgotten Trinity, and tried to make his presentation so that Christians could understand what his position was. The only Muslim that's ever done that. Most Muslims consider that a violation of some unspoken law, but he didn't, and that made for the best debate I've ever had with somebody on, it was serious, it wasn't filled with misrepresentations, and Abdullah Kunde joined our class via Skype to answer questions there at RTS. And that means he was up at like 3 o'clock in the morning to do it, because it's a 17-hour difference. And so I hope they remember that. He's done that for me like 3 different classes. And I highly recommend that debate of all debates we've done on that subject. So a couple of you have read it, but did you read it from beginning to end? And it didn't make much sense, did it? No. In my book, is it around page 45? It's somewhere in the 40s. Someone who has my book right now. What that?
The jar.
Yes. 53? Because the electronic version. Okay, and what page is that? 52, 53. Okay, pages 52, 53 in the printed edition of Whatever Christian Needs About the Qur'an gives you the best guess that we can come up with as to the chronological order of the surahs of the Qur'an. Because if you ever try to read it from Surah Al-Fatiha, which is the opening prayer, Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow, Surah 2, which is a book unto itself, all the way to Surah 114, it will basically make no sense to you at all, because there is no historical, geographical context to follow, because it's organized by the length of the surahs. A surah is a chapter. An ayah is a verse, okay? What you'll discover, any discussion of Islam will involve Arabic terminology. Islam is wedded to the Arabic language and Arabic culture. I was lecturing on this in Boulder, Colorado. I had some Muslims attending, and afterwards they came up, and one of the guys said, I sort of objected to what you were saying about Arabic, how central Arabic is. I'm not really sure that's true. We talked for 45 minutes, and after 45 minutes, I stopped him and I said, by the way, how many Arabic terms have we used so far in our conversation? And he sort of smiled and he said, yeah, you're right. And it's true. You'll see how many I will have to define for you. Surah, ayah, taqiyya, hadith, it's how it works. But anyways, the Quran as it exists today, you have Surah Al-Fatiha, which is the opening surah. It's a part of the Muslim prayers. How many of you know who Ergen Cantor was? You're smiling. So you know the whole story? Oh, okay. Not everybody does. You saw only about half the people in here know who Ergen Cantor was. Years ago, when I was studying Arabic, I had an Arabic tutor. He was born in Syria, native Syrian, Christian man, lives in Phoenix now, obviously. And Ergen Cantor was at one time, the president of Liberty Theological Seminary. And he claimed to be a converted Muslim, and he had been trained in jihad. And after 9/11, he became extremely popular and was going around, presenting all of this stuff. In 2010, I started realizing there was something completely wrong with his story. I had Muslims contacting me and say, did you know that Ergen Cantor claims to have debated Shabir Ali? And I'm like, because what happened was he's rabidly anti-reformed. And so we tried to set up a debate in 2006 at Liberty University on the reform side, it was be Tom Askell and myself versus the Cantor brothers, Emir and Ergen Cantor. A week before it was supposed to take place, they started changing the rules, and it was canceled. I found out years and years later, Paige Patterson, who knew what Ergen Cantor really was, shot it down. He shut it down purposely because he was afraid that they were going to be exposed, which eventually they were. Anyway, so all I knew about him is he was anti-Calvinism, just grossly so, and not accurately by any stretch of the imagination. And so it was 4 years later, I was flying to London, and a Muslim contacted me and said, did you know that Ergen Cantor claims to have debated Shabir Ali? And I'm like, no, you'd have to send me documentation of that. So he did. He sent me audio of Ergen Cantor claiming to have debated Shabir Ali. What was the other guy's name? Well, he claimed to have debated Nader Ahmed, who I've debated. sort of, if you can even debate Nader Ahmed. The guy's nuts. And then Servant of the Cross, the name's, he co-authored books with Norman Geisler and with R.C. Sproul. And it's a pseudonym that means servant of the cross in Arabic. And it's escaping me at the moment. Anyway, so I contacted Shabir and I said, have you ever debated Ergun Cantor? And he wrote back and said, not only never debated him, I've never even met him. So in January of, I think it was January 2010, I wrote to Ergun Cantor. And I said, I have contacted Shabir Ali. He's never even met you. Why is it that you're claiming to have debated him? Because he said he'd had like 300 debates in mosques and all the rest of this kind of stuff. And I kept writing to him saying, how come I can't find any of these things? I'd like to listen to some of these debates. Well, you know, we don't necessarily record everything for security purposes and so on and so forth. And I'd always found it very strange, but I hadn't really pursued it. Over the next number of months, some people in my chat channel started digging through records and stuff, and eventually discovered that he was born in Sweden, lived in Sweden till he was 2 and moved to Ohio and was raised in Ohio. And his whole story had been how he was born in Turkey and trained in jihad. And when they did eventually move to the United States, you know, he did, you know, all these infidels and all the rest of this stuff, and saying the prayers in the high school locker room, and he would frequently break into Arabic about stuff, and so he was a fraud, just a complete and total fraud. And he eventually Liberty let him go, and he's bounced around to various and sundry places. But we put together a video of all of his claiming to speak Arabic. And I sat down with my Arabic tutor, who was born in Syria, and we went through this whole video of him claiming to speak Arabic. He said he just said this. What did he actually say? And my tutor would sit there and go, I have no idea. Okay, how would you say that in Arabic? And then he'd say it in Arabic. The whole reason I'm saying this is my Arabic tutor during that video quoted Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening surah of the Qur'an. He's not a foreign Muslim. He was raised in a Christian family there in Syria. How did he know that? Because it's part of the prayers. And you would hear the prayers so much that you'd memorize what the prayers were, even when you weren't a Muslim. That's happening in Dearborn right now. That's happening in London. Surah Al-Fatiha is part of the call to prayer. And so there's going to be a lot of English-speaking people who are going to be memorizing Surah Al-Fatiha because it's a part of the call to prayer. And by the way, Cantor is still running around out there. I recorded at least 2-hour video on all the evidence that demonstrated that he was not anything that he ever claimed to be. A number of the publishers stopped publishing his books and stuff like that. Eventually it got around, but he never, ever, ever, ever admitted to any of it. He's never come out and said, you know what? I lied about all that stuff. He hasn't. And Norman Geisler went to his grave defending him. It's quite a scandal at the time. And you might go, well, how did you get involved with that? I had to. He was running around claiming to do what I actually do. He was claiming to debate the people I debate. He was claiming to debate in mosques. I debate in mosques. He was running around, and the Muslims were catching on to it. So what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to close my eyes to someone who's running around lying about the Muslims? No, I can't. And so it was not necessarily a whole lot of fun to engage in that particular mess, but it was a mess. And he still speaks at youth camps and stuff like that in some places, but
He still argues about Calvinism on Facebook groups too.
oh yeah, he still does. He still does. And he knows no more about Calvinism now than he did in 2006 when I first ran into him. So it's sad. Anyhow, so back to the Quran. The second surah, the cow, is as big as a book unto itself. Now the Quran's only 53% the length of the New Testament. So it's about half the length of the New Testament. So it's not a big book. But what makes it very difficult to understand is that it's ordered in length of the surahs. So Surah 2 is the longest, Surah 3 is a little bit shorter, Surah 4 is a little bit shorter, Surah 5 is a little bit shorter, on down to Surah 114, which is only 2 verses long. What that means is, if you read straight across, you're jumping back and forth between all sorts of different times in Muhammad's life. So, the surahs don't give you any, almost none of them give you any context at all. And so you'll go from a point where Muhammad is a persecuted minority in Mecca. The Meccans wanted to kill him because he was preaching monotheism. Their money came from pilgrims coming to worship at the Kaaba, where there are 360 idols. And so if you say there's only one God and you're making your money from idols, they wanted to get rid of the guy. He was protected by his uncle Abu Talib. And then there was the Hijra, where they left from. He goes from Mecca to Medina. He becomes sort of the prophet there, and they take over the town, and then battles start taking place. And when he's a persecuted minority prophet, that's the sections of the Qur'an that talk about religious freedom and not forcing someone. And then once he goes to Medina and now he's in charge, now you've got obey the prophet, kill the infidel, et cetera, et cetera. And then when they conquer Mecca, it only gets worse, even though he doesn't live much longer after that. And so the Qur'an is self-contradictory. And if you don't read it in chronological order, you don't see the transition taking place because it skips back and forth as you're reading it. So I remember very clearly on 9/11, well, 9/12, 9/13, reporters were running around bookstores buying copies of the Qur'an and leafing through it to try to find something to add to their reports about Muslim extremists and stuff like that. They couldn't make heads or tails out of it. Most people can't. If you really are interested in it, I mean, every Uber and cab I ever took in Europe and in Russia were driven by Muslims. And if you wanted to get into an awesome conversation, what I would do is I would narrate a hadith to them. The hadith are the collections of the sayings and actions of Muhammad and his companions that were collected about 250 years later. Long time. And the hadith are the essence of what Islam draws its teachings from to establish Sharia law. So the Quran, but the Quran has to be interpreted within some type of grid, some type of framework, because we sit around and we talk about, well, we're reading 1 Corinthians today, and let's remember what Corinth was like, and there were 3 pagan temples on every corner, and so all the meat in Corinth was sacrificed to idols, and so we've got all this background stuff that we bring in to understand what some of the stuff being discussed in Corinthians is about. You can't do any of that with the Quran. It's just not there. So what you do is you use the hadith. And to this day, did I mention to you yesterday I did. I mentioned to you yesterday, and I recommended them to your view, the 2 nights of dialogue I did with Dr. Yasir Qadhi in Memphis back in 2017, I think it was. 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. We're trying to arrange that. In fact, I really need to write to Dr. Qadhi probably this evening, if I can, in Dallas for late February next year. Anyway, Yasir Qadhi really helped me to understand Islam. I listened to his DVDs, and his Arabic was great, and all the rest of that stuff. He lectured a great deal on hadith studies. And I listened to all of his hadith stuff. That's one of the reasons he dialogued with me, is because I was the only Christian he ever met that would take the time to actually listen to everything he lectured about hadith studies. Because there are hundreds of thousands of hadith. But the vast majority of them they do not consider to be what's called sahih, sound, to actually go back to Muhammad. And so you have to understand how they categorize them and narrators and chains of narration. It's very complicated. And when he found out that I was riding a bike in Phoenix during the summer at 3:30 in the morning in the heat, out there alone, listening to his hadith studies, he thought, this is somebody I think I might be interested in actually talking to. And so that's how that all ended up working out. But the hadith, there are certain hadith called mutawatir hadith. See how many Arabic terms coming in here? Mutawatir hadith means universally accepted. And so when Muslims go into the mosque on Fridays, that's their day of worship, and the khutbah, the sermons, almost always what happens is they are hearing various hadith being narrated and explained to them. Okay? And so there are certain ones, hey Bob, there are certain ones that all Muslims know. And some of them that if you narrate them lead directly into a gospel presentation. They really do. They really do. And so I have opened so many doors of conversation in the back of a cab or an Uber by accurately narrating a hadith to a Muslim. They've never met a Christian who knew anything about the hadith. And then I go, well, you know, have you ever heard of Shabir Ali? Oh, yeah, I don't know. You know, I've debated him 7 times. You're kidding. And I remember this one guy, he dropped me off at the airport, and he gets out and he's running around. He's got a pad of paper. I said, okay, now what was that YouTube channel again? You know, he's writing this stuff. He wants more information. I mean, it was a very, very, very effective way of getting people to listen. And the point is with Muslims, if you can demonstrate you've done almost anything to accurately understand what they believe, you purchase yourself a tremendous amount of time for conversation. Muslims want to talk to you about Jesus. Do you know that? They want to. And normally we're the ones hiding from that. We're the ones running from that. That's one of the things Yasir said to me when we were setting up those dialogues. Is he said, I know the difference between liberal Christians and conservative Christians. And I know the liberal Christians don't really believe much. But he says, I can't get the conservative Christians to talk to me about anything. I'm about the only one. And it shouldn't be that way. What's that? Did someone say something? Okay, I'm sorry. Thought somebody was making a comment. It shouldn't be that way. It really should not be that way. And so if you'll take the time, if all you ever did was read the sections of the Qur'an that are addressed to the Al-Injil or the Al-Kitab, the people of the book or the people of the gospel, that wouldn't take long. And if you told a Muslim you had done that, you're going to have a great conversation with them. You've earned their respect because nobody does it. And they don't read the Bible either, almost ever. Here in the United States, yeah, some of the people that do apologetics, they'll read the Bible some. But if they're coming from a majority Muslim country, it's almost the exact percentage of Muslims have read the Bible as Christians have read the Quran, even though the Bible is a whole lot longer than the Quran. So there is a way to open a door, but most Christians are too afraid to do it. They're just too afraid to do it. Or they just completely lack any love for them at all. It's like, those people are scary. I'm not gonna go there. Yet some of the kindest, warm, loving people I've ever met were Muslims. You know, they just wanted to live their lives, and they didn't want to blow anybody up or anything else. So we'll talk a little bit about what leads to that as we get into this. But there is a resource that you might want to use now. I mentioned it to somebody last night at the end of the class. About 5 years ago or so, they published the study Qur'an. The study Qur'an. And it looks like the ESV study Bible. So it's got a little bit of text at the top of the page and then notes, 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 notes. And that would be the closest thing you're going to be able to get to something that would help you with introductions and be able to figure out where this is coming from, what happened during Muhammad's life at this point in time, that kind of stuff. It's called the Study Qur'an. It's on Amazon. Yeah.
The two that you mentioned right before that, the people of the book and the people of the gospel, are those like surahs within the Quran? Or?
No, that's phrases. The Quran addresses the Al-Kitab. Now, the Al-Kitab, the people of the book can be Jews or Christians, sometimes both, sometimes one or the other. It depends on the context. Al-Injil is only used a few times and it's always Christians because that means the people of the gospel. And so we are, it's Muhammad dies in 632. So you're talking half a millennium after the resurrection. And so we are directly addressed as Christians in the text of the Quran. And so when someone takes the time to go, okay, your holy book addresses us, I'm going to find out what it says. They're like, well, cool. What'd you think? Oh, wow. Do we have an open door now to talk about this? Because I also read what the Quran said about Isa bin Maryam. That's Jesus. There's about 96 references, not by name, but in reference to Jesus in the Quran. And all you got to do is memorize a few hadith, or you don't even have to memorize them. Just listen to them a few times so you can get the story right, to understand how Jesus functions in their theology. And you quote that and 2 surahs of the Quran, you better be ready for a 3-hour conversation because the door is going to be wide open. Think of how we have to stand on our head and wear a clown suit to get a secularist to talk with us that long. And the Muslims want to, but there's almost nobody who will take them up on it. Almost nobody will take them up on it. It's an amazing thing. So let's get some stuff down. Let's make sure that I want you to at least go, I think I have a basic understanding of what Sunni Islam is. I'm going to be focusing on Sunni Islam. Shia Islam is different. And I realize Shiism is sort of on everybody's tongue these days because Iran is a Shiite Muslim country. But the Shiites represent really less than 10% of the world's Muslims. What's the largest Muslim country in the world?
Population or?
Population.
Malaysia or Indonesia?
Indonesia. And Indonesia, Malaysia, they're Sunni.
So what do they do when they translate to their languages over there, the Quran, but the actual true Quran is not translated?
Even in places like that, they would say that even their, what we would call translations of the Quran, are not really the Quran. So the vast majority of Muslims cannot read the Quran in Arabic. Now, they learn enough Arabic language to do the prayers, because the prayers are in Arabic. They learn enough to talk the theology and talk about the hadith and what tawheed is and shirk, and which I'll be explaining here in a second. But yeah, they don't have direct access to it. They never had an Acts 15.
Yeah.
See, in Acts 15, we were freed from having a specifically Jewish limitation to the faith. They never had an Acts 15. And so you still basically have to become an Arab before anything else.
It's because they didn't have an Acts 2.
Well, of course. There's a lot of things going on there. But yeah, that is a major issue. I think I have a video in here that will help you with this. I'll have to see. If not, I'll pull up another presentation that has it. Okay, the 5 pillars of Islam. This is of Sunni Islam, not Shia Islam. Shiites would agree with a lot of this, but they would formulate some of these things differently. The 5 are the Shahada. That's how you become a Muslim. You say there is only one true God, Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. But saying that in English does not make you a Muslim. You have to say it in Arabic, even if they have to walk you through it, syllable by syllable. La ilaha illallah wa Muhammadan Rasulullah. That's what you have to say. Now, there are also 7 conditions that have to be fulfilled for that to be a true shahada, including you have to actually believe it, which is why I didn't just become a Muslim. But it is fascinating to me that the shahada has to be taken in Arabic, no matter what your language is. It's one of the real differences between the gospel and Islam. So that's the shahada. The 2 is salat, the prayers, the 5 daily prayers, Fajr, Dur, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. Saum, fasting, especially in the month of Ramadan. Zakat, almsgiving, and the Hajj, the pilgrimage. So let's look at those. Let me see if this will have what I... That's good. All right.
Can you stand for me quickly? Just stand for me. Come right here, please.
Okay. All right. This is, his name's escaping me for a moment. It'll come to me in a second. This is in Sydney, Australia. And this man has done like 4 nights of lectures on why you should become a Muslim. They're primarily anti-Christian lectures. They were very poor, very shallow, easily refuted. I listened to all of them, of course, and then played them on the dividing line and refuted them. But this is what you would call a Muslim altar call. Want to know what an altar call looks like? This is what one looks like in Islam. And I think it's really important for you to watch this. What is the same and what is different and why? Because you are seeing people becoming Muslims here. It has not been explained to them that you simply can't leave Islam. Muhammad was very clear. The penalty for leaving Islam is death. There's no way around that. There's no exceptions. I'm not saying there hasn't been people who've left Islam. I know but the thing you have to realize, especially in Islamic countries, is when you call someone to have faith in Christ, they know that if they leave Islam, they're marked for death. I mean, there's going to be no word faith religion in Islamic countries, okay? Well, accept Jesus, your teeth will be straight, but they'll kill you. It doesn't work. So that hasn't been explained to them. But you'll see Western Australians, men and women, coming forward to become Muslims. And this is how it's done. And so I want you to watch it and listen and go, okay, there's a similarity, there's a difference. Why is that? Why is it different? What's the similarity? Is it just a surface similarity? He's quite the salesman too. So check it out.
I want to make this transition or this transaction, because this is what it is. These are human beings that's making a transaction with God. They're not making a transaction for us. They're making a transaction with God and a transition in their lives. So I want to make this easy for them. We have a gift for them, and we're going to give them this gift. Now, the gift that we're giving to them is something that will help them on their way. One, it's a copy of the Qur'an with the transliteration of the meanings. Is to acknowledge God, conform. Secondly, and worship Almighty God. It's a short, easy to read, authentic biography of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. Thirdly, it is a set.
Okay, I looked it up real quick. It was easy to find. His name is Khalid Yassin. Khalid Yassin. I just had to find it. This was from, well, I'm not sure exactly what the date was, but it's obviously, you can tell by the resolution, it's probably been 15 years or so. I've used this in my presentations for years and years and years. And yes, I've invited Khalid Yassin to debate, but he won't. But he's American. You can tell that by the language. It makes it, that's one of the reasons I use it. It's a lot easier for people to understand. Frequently, when you have folks with a heavy accent, they're struggling to understand that, and they're not really following what's going on. But so here, they're coming forward, they're being given these gifts, and that happens in Christian churches. People come forward, you give them discipleship materials, Bibles, things like that. Very, very similar along those lines.
Of 7 books. It is a set of 7 books that have in it lessons for new Muslims. Now, your acceptance of Islam is your acceptance of God, not your acceptance of me, or not your acceptance of these people, nor your acceptance of the political dynamics in the world, because it has nothing to do with that. It's just your acceptance of God. And this gift is to help you make that transition. I want you to say with me the simple words. And these words are nothing more than what I have explained. There's no trick, no curve, and we don't have a pool in the back for you to dip in. But let's say the words. Let's just go over the words called the Shahada, the bearing of witness. And I'll tell you what it is. Essentially, it is the saying of that there's none to be worshipped except Almighty God, and that Muhammad is the messenger of God. Saying that word and then adding to it, I testify, or I declare, or I announce that there's none to be worshipped except Almighty God, and that I testify, or I declare, or I announce that Muhammad is the messenger of God, brings you or into the transition of Islam. From that point, it's your sincerity, it's your acts of worship, it is your commitment that will make the difference. Now, whatever you owe God or something you did that only you know and God knows, after tonight, your board is clear. Because God is the forgiver of those that come back to him. But whatever you owe somebody, money, rent, a loan, you still owe that. Is that fair? Okay, please, just say after me the words, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ameen.
Okay, that's how you become a Muslim. Now, if you're wondering, he did a little bit more complicated shahada because he had them say the standard shahada, la ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah. Then he had them say, and I confess, I profess that there is only one God, and I profess, we have the special caffeine-rich, keep you awake after 2 o'clock stuff coming for those people who ordered it. Evidently, I wasn't one of them. But anyway, and then it sort of expanded upon blessings and peace upon Muhammad and stuff like that. So I was a little longer than what I had given to you. But anyways, that's how you become a Muslim. Has to be done in Arabic. And there's no way back out. There's no way back out.
The Theological Hotel California.
never really thought of it quite in that way, but we appreciate the comments from the peanut gallery. So yes, it's very true. It's very true. So the salat are the prayers. In some countries like Indonesia, you don't ask someone if they're a Muslim. All you ask them is, do you do the prayers? It so directly identifies who a Muslim is. And if you know a Muslim in your neighborhood, for example, that doesn't do the prayers, they are nominal. They are a Muslim in name only. And of course, the prayers, I mean, you can buy apps, phone, watches, all sorts of stuff. And when you do the prayers, you are to face the black stone in the Grand Mosque in Mecca. Now, historically, they started off facing Jerusalem. There's clear evidence of that. That changed over time. They don't want to admit that, but it changed over time. And so there are GPS programs and everything so you can make sure you know that you're facing the right direction no matter where you are on the face of the earth. And in a mosque, there will be, in front of the prayer area, there will be a corner that goes together like this. That's called the Qibla. And the Qibla faces Mecca. All right? Now,
They constructed that way.
it's constructed that way.
Constructed.
Yes, purposely done. All mosques are that way since about 725 or so. And one of the things that was so amazing for me as an experience was this. I should just keep, well, it is up. Look at that. Here it is. October 7th, 2013, Sin and Salvation, White versus Ali.
No one understands. No one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one. Their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of
Here.
asps is under their lips. They're in himself.
Okay, so see where I'm standing?
From
That's the Qibla. That's where the imam leads the prayers. And I'm standing where the imam leads the prayers, proclaiming the gospel. And
every lawless deed, there is nothing beyond the redeeming power of Jesus Christ. No sin, no matter how great, is beyond his power. He is a perfect Savior. And I can tell you this evening, folks, I have no right to stand before you as some type of perfect man because I am not. I am a redeemed sinner. And it is a privilege for me to be able to speak the gospel because I know my unworthiness. The only worthiness I will ever have to stand before a holy God is to stand in the righteousness of Jesus Christ, which is mine by faith. How can you stand before a holy God? Will he not look into your heart? Will he not know that even when you do your good deeds, you do them with the stain of sin? You know that people are looking at you. Isn't there some arrogance? Isn't there some pride? Do you go home and treat your wife badly? God knows all those things. The only way I'm going to be able to stand before a holy God is if I am clothed in the righteousness of another, because my righteousness will never avail. And that's why I need to have the righteousness of Jesus Christ.
you see the people in the chairs? Those are the Christians. The people seated on the carpet are the Muslims. And they're right in front of me. Every time I've debated in a mosque, they're closer to me than the front row of seats here. I don't know how to describe that night. That was the first time that I had done a debate. I had done debates in rooms associated with the mosque, but I had never stood where the imam led the prayers. And what you can't see here is if the camera pans up, there's another floor up here, and that's where the women are. You'll see them looking out from up above because they're segregated out. But you watch this debate, if you just put in Sin and Salvation, White versus Ali, if you listen to the whole thing, I had the opportunity looking right into their eyes to talk about unworthiness and the righteousness of Christ. And I'm standing there in stocking feet. You don't wear shoes in a mosque. And it's not a religious thing. If they sit on the floor, you got to keep the carpet clean. My daughter doesn't let me in her house with shoes on either. So it sort of works that way there too. But some people will ask you, are you ever afraid in that situation? I feel more safe there than driving there on the road. They'll have lots of questions, but none of them are asleep. They're listening.
You all taking notes, I saw.
Oh, yeah. Well, that guy right there is a Christian. He's on a chair.
Oh, no, I wanted the.
Right, yeah. And I can tell you the names of some of those men because I've debated them in other contexts and things like that. But that was an incredible experience. But anyways, that where I was standing is the Qibla, and it is directed toward Mecca.
I have a question. When you debated in mosques in the Middle East, have you debated? No. Okay.
I haven't been to the Middle East. Well, the only place I've been in the Middle East is Israel. One brief visit, so no. No, the mosques that I've debated in, the mosques where I was actually in front of the Qibla were all in South Africa. I've debated in mosques in London and in Australia, but they were in rooms adjacent to. They weren't in the actual place of prayer. Okay. I'm not sure if I have. Yes, I do.
Facing towards the Qibla, the Kaaba in Mecca, is a necessary precondition of performance of prayer. Muslims believe that the Kaaba is the first house built to glorify and worship the one God by the prophet Abraham. Muslims from all over the world, whether they are in the east or west, north or south, turn their faces toward the Kaaba at the prayer time. If a person is in a place such as a desert, jungle, a strange town, or a place where he is unable to find out the direction from others, then he is allowed to use his own judgment and offers his prayers facing in any direction that he thinks the Qibla could be. Nowadays, a compass is available, which gives the direction of the Qibla from anywhere in the world. The person now makes the niyyah, or intention in his mind, more specific, relative to whatever prayer he is ready to perform. Again, the niyyah does not have to be expressed aloud. Now that we have gone through the preliminaries for offering the prayer or salat, we are about to commence the act by declaring the niyyah. Demonstrates the required number of rakats or units in each prayer. Fajr is from dawn to sunrise. The number of rakats are 2 sunnah, 2 fard.
Allahu Akbar.
Notice the woman's behind.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا.
So the man's leading it. The woman doesn't say anything. And this is Surah Al-Fatiha. So this is the opening surah of the Quran that they are reciting at this point.
صراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت.
Now, notice what's being said here. Show us the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored. Now watch the rest of it.
عليهم غير المغضوب
Not the path of those who earn thy anger, nor of those who go astray. The hadith is very clear that Muhammad interpreted this. Those who earn thine anger are the Jews, Those who go astray are the Christians. So every day, the Muslim prays not to be you. Seriously. And most people don't understand that, but they believe that the Jews have earned God's wrath. You see that in how Muslims and Jews get along so well. And Christians, they view that we have gone into excess. We've gone astray by viewing Jesus as deity. Yes, sir.
So I'm pretty familiar with where they view us as having gone astray. What do they point to? Why have the Jews earned God's anger?
I think probably the most obvious answer to that is that early on, once Muhammad gained some political power in Medina, the people that turned on him first were the Jews. And so they were opposing Allah's prophet. And functionally, I think that's where it started. And sadly, we're still living with the results with nuclear weapons and everything else since then. Yeah.
Didn't Arabic and Jewish contention exist way before Muhammad, considering Ishmael and the prophecy?
Well, that's assuming Ishmael is who the Muslims say he is. They claim him as their forefather. We really don't know that at all. That's we don't have the genealogies to be able to determine that kind of thing that far back. So there was all sorts of tribal stuff, yeah. But you got to remember, this is coming from the 7th century after Christ. These prayers derive from that time period. And so a lot has happened since that period, yeah.
To say gone astray would imply that we were on the same path as.
Yeah. The Qur'an very clearly views Christians in a higher way than Jews. They view our errors as excess. Again, depends on which part of the Qur'an you're reading, because there was a period of time in Muhammad's life when he was courting the favor of Christians as well. So there's a section in the Qur'an that talks about Christians being of the best of men. There's other sections that are considerably less positive. So it depends on what was going on at that time, which you can't tell by reading the Qur'an if you read it straight through. That's the problem, yeah.
So a question about something the lady said in the video that was showing the thing. She said Abraham built it.
Right.
And so.
Which Abraham was never down there, so no, he didn't. But
Right. But like, she said that Abraham was also a prophet, so I'm wondering like how these prophets that are not Muhammad kind of fit into their.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Every people has had a prophet sent to them, according to Islam. Every people says the Shahada. Every prophet teaches the same message. La ilaha illallah. There is only one God, Allah. What's different is Moses would have taught the people, and Moses is the prophet of God. Or Jesus would have Jesus the prophet of God. Muhammad is the final prophet. There's going to be no more prophets after him. And so the final Shahada is, and Muhammad is the prophet of God. But before Muhammad, prophets were sent to every people group. They all taught the same monotheism. And then the final prophet comes, and that's Muhammad.
So I mean, just by way of.
There have been thousands of prophets.
Okay, yeah. I was about to say, so it's Hosea, a prophet.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but he would have taught La ilaha illallah wa Moses or Rasulullah or something along those lines. Yeah. That Zalim, those who go astray.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك.
You have to have the proper hand over the other. Women do it a little bit differently.
الله أكبر.
So there's a brief introduction to Islamic prayer. And it's pretty consistent around the world, honestly. It really is. Saum is fasting, the month of Ramadan. Ramadan finished a little while ago. Since Muslims use a lunar calendar, Ramadan moves, is it 11 days? I think it's 11 days. Which direction? Forward. Yeah, I think 11 days forward each year. It's earlier by that much. So it moves through the course of the year. So eventually Ramadan will be in the winter in the northern hemispheres, summer in the southern hemispheres. It's particularly brutal when Ramadan is in July in Pakistan or African nations, because the fasting is from food and water. So from sunrise to sunset. So during the summer, the sun rises super early, sets real late, and you're not even allowed to drink water. It happens fairly regularly that Muslim clerics with authority in particular areas will put out a fatwa allowing drinking during Ramadan because people are just dying. They're just dying. It has been studied because you don't eat during the day. Once the sun has gone down, have fun.
Okay.
And the studies have shown that Muslims consume considerably more calories during Ramadan than any other month of the year. They just do it a whole lot faster. Because obviously what they try to do is switch their sleeping time. You try to sleep during the day. But one of the other things is in Ramadan, you have what's called Laylat al-Qadr. Laylat al-Qadr. See how much Arabic there is? Laylat al-Qadr is the night of power. Laylat al-Qadr was the night when the Qur'an was sent down to the angel Jibril. Angel Gabriel, we would say, but they say Jibril. So again, the Qur'an exists on the heavenly tablet. It is eternal. And on the night of power, its contents are given to the angel Jibril. And then he begins to, over a number of years, in piecemeal, give it to the Prophet Muhammad. And I'm trying to remember the specific numbers. They don't know whether it's the 21st, 23rd, 25th, or 27th night of Ramadan. They don't know which one it is. But the promise is that the prayers that you perform on Laylat al-Qadr, what was the number? Are like 400 times more effective than any other night of the year. So what Muslims will do is on the 21, 23, 25, 27 of Ramadan, they will stay up all night doing prayer because one of them is Laylat al-Qadr. So they've got a shot at one of it. And it'll have super special effect when they do it on that specific night. Just so you know. Zakat is almsgiving, and if I recall correctly, it was basically it only functions now in Muslim countries. If your government isn't a Muslim government, then what you do is you give alms to the poor, alms to poor Muslims, build mosques, whatever it is. In a Muslim country, I forget what the percentage was, 2/5 of 1% or something like that. It's not huge, but it is mandatory to give the zakat. And then Hajj, this is interesting. Until recently, remember Haji in the, what was that? Johnny Quest, Haji, yeah, Haji. Haji is someone who's gone on Hajj, who's gone on pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina during the prescribed times. And that was prescribed for all Muslims to do at least once in their life. There are so many Muslims now, it's no longer possible. Because Saudi Arabia only lets a certain number of people in, and someone ran the numbers of the past decade or so, and given the number of Muslims in the world, even if you wanted to, your chances of being able to go on Hajj don't exist. There's too many Muslims. Doesn't fit anymore. So you can understand how that worked early on, but they never figured that it would be a worldwide religion and you'd have such a small place to go. But you would go to what you saw there. Here, I think I have a video. Here we go.
Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca is compulsory for all Muslims in good health and with sufficient funds to make the journey. The Hajj is the foremost of all Muslim rituals, even if less than 10% of all Muslims ever manage to complete it. The Hajj's importance lies in its allowing the believer to approach the center of the world, as well as the place where the Quran's divine revelations began and continued for about 12 years. The performer of Hajj does not only reenact Muhammad's ritual, he or she also recalls acts of important people in Muslim history. The rituals performed around the Kaaba
Okay, just so you know, the Kaaba has been torn down and rebuilt many times in Muslim history. Wasn't all that long ago, 30, 40 years ago, when this one was built. So that's not the important part. The important part's the black stone. There is a black stone in one of the corners of the Kaaba. I've even seen videos from Muslim engineers telling people how to get into see how everybody's circumambulating around it? Where to enter in to be naturally taken by the flow of people close enough to be able to kiss and touch the black stone, which only a few people can. And so they believe that black stone fell down from heaven. And it was originally white and has turned black with the sins of men. But that's what they're facing when they pray. It's clearly just a part of the ancient pagan nature of this building. It's the only idol that survived. There are videos from inside the Kaaba on YouTube if you want to look them up. It's not overly exciting, but they're there. There are videos. The Saudi Arabians have let people do stuff that they weren't allowed to do before.
Acts when Prophet Abraham and Ishmael transformed the Kaaba into the sacred place of worship and peace. In spite of some physical hardships, pilgrims who complete the Hajj consider it one of the greatest spiritual experiences of their lives. Many Muslims regard the Hajj as one of the great achievements of civilization because it brings together people from around the world and focuses them upon a single goal. A believer is required to make the pilgrimage at least once in his or her lifetime.
Until recently, when someone said, well, if there are this many Muslims in the world and Saudi Arabia only lets this many in per year, it's not going to work. So how do you do that? That's a good question. They really haven't come up with an answer. Well, the Hajj of desire, I guess, would be the way to look at it. Oh, here's the inside of the Kaaba. That's all there is to it. But I'm sure whoever did that had friends. So that's the inside of the Kaaba. Here's the black stone. There's Muhammad Ali appearing at the black stone down there in the center. But it's inside that silver thing. And if you can get close enough to touch that and kiss it, so on and so forth, you'll get a million diseases, but you'll be greatly blessed. To give you an idea. So, if those are the 5 pillars, sir.
The protocol to actually get in, I'm sure.
Like that guy did? Yeah, that's called having friends in the Saudi Arabian government. A regular pilgrim would never be able to do that. Yeah. I'm sorry?
Like, it wouldn't be that easy to just walk up to.
No.
Place that now is in.
Nope. Okay, real quickly, the 6 articles of belief of Sunni Islam, then we'll take a break at the half hour.
What have they done to replace the necessity to go there once in their life? The Hajj.
Well, they still say to try for it, but I'm not sure how many Muslims actually realize that that 5th pillar really can't be meaningfully fulfilled any longer. I don't know how many even know that. I doubt it's talked a lot about on TV stations in Middle East or Indonesia or wherever else. The 6 articles of belief, Sunni Islam. 1, belief in Allah. 2, belief in all the prophets and messengers. So remember, there are many prophets, and we don't have the majority of what the many prophets have said. All we can say from the Muslim perspective is that they taught monotheism. That was what connected them all together. Belief in the angels, and that includes the jinn. It was very interesting when I first started listening to Yasir Qadhi's CDs on the meaning of Islam and things like that. Tremendously complex traditions and beliefs about the jinn. Some of the ayahs in the Qur'an are literally incantations to protect you from the jinn. The jinn are faster and stronger than human beings are. There's, I just don't know how much to go into here as far as folk religion Islam will have a tremendous amount of, just like folk religion Roman Catholicism, the saints are everywhere. There are incantations and prayers you can pray because the jinn will like to watch you go to the bathroom. So the Muslims will pray a certain prayer before they go into the bathroom to keep the jinn from watching them go to the bathroom. You never offer your left hand to someone to shake in Islamic countries because Muhammad taught that you are to wipe yourself with the left hand. And again, it has to do with the jinn and again, when Qadhi started going through all this stuff, I'm just like, whoa, okay, I didn't know all that. But then again, you go down to Haiti and you'll run into a whole lot of weird stuff with Catholic saints too. So, yeah. Belief in the books, plural, sent by God. God has sent down, Natsal is the Arabic term, Natsal has sent down many books. The Torah was Natsal by God, the Mosaic Law. The Injil was sent down by God. And the Qur'an is the final message sent down by God. And most of them would basically say that if you don't believe in the Qur'an, you don't really believe in the Torah and the Injil either. But belief in the Day of Judgment and belief in Qadr. Now, Qadr literally means power. So Laylat al-Qadr, night of power. Laylat is night. Laylat al-Qadr, night of power. I did a debate with a Muslim in Durban on predestination election. It's painfully obvious that Muhammad believed, well, vast majority of the Muslims in the world believe that 40 days after you are conceived in the womb, an angel comes and writes on your forehead whether you will go to heaven or to hell, whether you'll have a good life or an easy life.
And that is absolutely fixed. There's nothing you can do about it. Pure faith. And it's not predestination in the sense of working out the purposes of Allah. Allah is above and beyond all this stuff. Instead, it is, well, it's really random. I mean, no Muslim really has any kind of assurance because they don't have a mediator, they don't have redemption. And one of the mutawatir hadiths goes like this. Muhammad narrated, well, this would be one of his followers narrated that Muhammad said that there are some people who do the deeds of the people of heaven until they are about to enter in, and then what is written for them overtakes them, and they enter into hell. And there are other people who do the deeds of hell their entire life until they're about to enter in, and then what is written of them overcomes them, and they enter into paradise. That's a mutawatir hadith, universally accepted. Now, it's interesting. I read a book a number of years ago, about 10 years ago now, a little more, from a Muslim saying, we have to get rid of the concept of mutawatir hadith because these hadith are not just. And that's one of them that he specifically focused on. But basically what it's saying is you can live your life like a citizen of heaven, and until you're just about to die and enter into heaven, and then what is written of you 40 days after your conception, written on your forehead, whether you be male or female, we know that happens before then, but male or female, whether you're going to make it to heaven and earth, happy life, sad life, whatever, until what is written of you overtakes you and you enter into someplace else. You enter into hell. You live a perfectly good, holy life, then you end up in hell anyways. I think this is for humans. Down front, looks like it should be, so anyway. And vice versa. So there are people who live a horrible life and end up in paradise. The point being that whether you end up in paradise or hell has nothing to do with the demonstration of God's glory or anything like that. It's fate, it's random. And that's really reprehensible to a lot of people, and it should be. It should be. Hey, Bob. So a couple other hadith. One of the famous things in Islam is Muhammad's night journey, where he was taken by an angel up through the various levels of heaven. And interesting enough, he met Jesus in the third level. He's not even halfway up the levels of heaven. Met other people from the Bible at various other levels. But one of the most important ones, I think, for us to know is the hadith that speaks of the Day of Judgment. So, belief in the Day of Judgment, the fifth belief there. That on that Day of Judgment, there will be such terrible fear that the people, all of humanity is going to be judged, will gather together and they will go to Adam. And they will say, Adam, Father Adam, intercede for us, for we fear Allah's judgment. And Adam will say, I sin. I cannot intercede for you. I fear as well. And they will go to Moses. And no, they'll go to Abraham. And Abraham will say that he sinned. He fears as well. They'll go to Moses. I cannot intercede for you. They go to all these Old Testament prophets. And then they come to Jesus. Now, there's different versions of this. I've looked them up in a number of my various resources. There was one rendition that did say something about Jesus' sin. All the rest of them did not. They did not say Jesus sinned. But he said, this is not for me to do. Go to Muhammad. And so the people come to Muhammad. Muhammad accepts their entreaty. He is taught a special way to worship Allah. And so he approaches Allah, he worships him in this special way, and all of, basically, everyone who has ever said the Shahada is allowed into heaven. Some, however, sort of go through like a purgatorial period. It's interesting how that specifically works. Some of the hadith, and the hadith are not consistent on this. This is one of the biggest problems with Islam, is the hadith are inconsistent. But some of the hadith indicate that the sins of Muslims are placed on Jews and Christians. And that's how they gain forgiveness, even if they have sins that would preclude them from entering into presence. Another hadith says that the judgment, a person was brought before Allah, and the scrolls of all his bad deeds were brought forward, and they were huge, and he wept. And then Allah said, but look, there is one scroll on your positive side, and it's open, and it's the Shahada. And so he enters into paradise. You read the hadith, and you can see how you can come up with so many different understandings, depending on which reading you accept, which one you prioritize over another one. If I interpret this hadith in light of that hadith, et cetera, et cetera. It's very easy to see why there's the wide variety of opinions and perspectives out there within Islam. There really, really is. So, all right. So those are the 6 articles of Sunni belief.